Dupe. Okay.
All right, and good morning. I see Poncho has first blood this morning, and I see Danny and James with us. Good morning. How you doing?
Man, I'm let's see. I'm pretty good, I think. I don't know what to do. We live in a post-science world. I can no longer. There is no more science. At least, come December, there will be no more science. So I will no longer be allowed to make a hypothesis and test it repeatedly to see how accurate that hypothesis is. I guess.
We can no longer rely on bodies in motion to fall at 32 seconds per second and accelerate toward terminal velocity with the expectation that a striking of the ground will result in an equal and opposite force reaction. Because there is no more science.
Yeah, speaking of that, do you know that an ant can never achieve quote-unquote terminal velocity? Its body shape, size, and mass are distributed in such a way where, an ant could fall off the Empire State Building. And, I mean, I'm sure it would be confused AF at the end of it. But, yeah. Speaking of terminal
Danny says maybe we get science back after Fauci. Speaking of terminal velocity and the kind of golden parachute that can protect you from such a fall, Fauci is taking the largest golden parachute in U.S. history.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean,
$350,000 annual pension.
I don't know that that's the largest golden parachute in history. Some of those Wall Street guys have walked away with
U.S.
millions.
government pension.
Oh,
it's the largest U.S. government pension ever paid. That's not speculation. That is the case.
Okay. Well, it was important because when you said largest ever, I thought you meant like ever. And
No.
There's no possible way.
No.
Like failing on Wall Street's the best way to get rich ever.
Yeah, just like every other thing that is true about government. It's just like every other thing that the government does. The private sector does it better. Even golden parachutes. Hell, the private sector fails better.
Yes. So,
Andrew says, here comes Nuremberg 2.0. We can only hope.
No, the problem is, it's not, it wouldn't even take Nuremberg, okay? I just wish when...
Just following orders.
Look, I just wish when people like this got to the end, they've amassed all this wealth and power and clout and everything. It'd be nice if they could just spend their remaining days on Earth in humiliation. That they know that they are beneath contempt, that except for the small percentage of the population that they manage to remain brainwashed, the rest of us effectively have exiled them to an island, a la Napoleon when he finally lost. Like, that would be great. And I think it would be great, and I think it would be effective because guys like Fauci, I don't know if you've noticed, but Tony's got a bit of an ego.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. And statements like this don't help. Whether you've met him in person or not, whether you met him personally or not, he has touched all Americans' lives with his work. President Joe Biden said of news that his chief medical advisor, Anthony Fauci, is finally retiring. That is absolutely correct, because the work of Dr. Anthony Fauci, his most recent failings have hurt you all personally. I still see people driving alone with masks on.
Yes, look, I won't say anything about the context, but there's a few people at work that still insist on wearing them. And I mean, and I'm just like, I'm this close. I'm just going to be like, look, you don't have to anymore. I know you got the memo because you're wearing the mask in the first place. What are you doing? Right. And there's one, okay, has a beard, and wears it like this.
With his nose sticking up. Okay, yeah.
And I'm just like, dude, please stop. I'm losing IQ points just looking at you. Jesus, please. But anyhow, because of pieces of shit like him, but I really think the broader point is, like when Hillary was defeated, for example, Hillary should have just been embarrassed to go out in public for the rest of her life. I think that for a lot of these people, if they knew that when they came to the end, they were going to spend the remainder of their days in absolute humiliation, a lot of them would change their behavior, even if all they did was change their behavior enough to where they were simply careful enough to not get caught. Even that would be a net positive, because I mean, I don't know how much time you want to spend on Fauci and how wrong he was about AIDS, for example.
Oh, yeah, let's touch some of his greatest hits. For example, Fauci, Dead Orphans, AIDS Drug Trials, and the Lies. These studies were funded in whole or in part by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, a federal agency headed up by Anthony Fauci since 1984. In 2014, investigative reporter Liam Sheff wrote an article at omsj.org looking back on the orphan scandal. 10 years earlier, he had broken the story and was then subjected to multiple attacks in the press. In 2004, I broke open this is from Sheff's article. 2004, I broke open the NIH clinical trial scandal, the internationally covered story of hundreds of New York City orphans used by government agencies and pharmaceutical companies in deadly AIDS drug trials. In reporting this issue, I entered the orphanage where children were being used as guinea pigs, and over a period of several years took interviews with mothers, children, and child care workers at the Incarceration Child Center. I also interviewed the medical director and investigated the FDA documentation and published medical literature on the tests and drugs used, drugs which were often force-fed through nasal and gastric tubes to children. Reported several deaths in children, and although the mainstream denied that any deaths were due to drug toxicity, they admit that over 200 children died. And if
that's right, kids. We used Oliver Twist to test out the AIDS virus thingy.
And of course, when Fauci got caught in that whole scandal, and they wouldn't let him use children to test his murder drugs on anymore, he just started feeding puppies to
sand fleas,
carnivorous sand fleas. And that's without even going into all of the just grotesque failures of Fauci's early career and the so-called AIDS epidemic, where, of course, we were told, they brought people into the school to talk to us. They brought men to tell us about how they were HIV positive and it had ruined their lives, and we were all going to catch AIDS. They were all gay.
Yeah, it's kind of like the monkeypox. It's a lot like the monkeypox.
Strange. They all just happened to be gay. I'm not saying that that's got anything to do with anything at all.
Well, I'm sure some of them were drug addicts.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there were some of these gay men were also drug addicts.
Well, no, I mean, look, and I know exactly what you're talking about because I'm the same age as you. I remember it being on Oprah that, by the year, I forget, 2000 or 2010, whatever it was, there would be like 3 million heterosexual people in this country with AIDS. I forget, I literally forget the exact numbers, but basically, guys like Dr. Fauci swore up and down that the day was coming, that the disease was gonna jump outside the homosexual community, and that, yeah, we had to take it serious. I mean, man, it's an epidemic, it's a pandemic, it's all these things, and
It sure does sound familiar.
yes, it does. Sounds very, very familiar. It sounds almost like the science never tested his own hypothesis, or it actually sounds a lot like
his hypotheses were tested and then the results were hidden.
I've heard people that are also doctors that are also extremely intelligent and well-educated and everything that would quite literally be one-to-one peers of Dr. Fauci talk, and a lot of them do not like him because he's very arrogant, does not like to be contradicted, and well, frankly, it's all about like they refer to him, like that quote about it's all about Tony's ego. Like that's what they say about him. It's all about Tony's ego, and we're talking about a guy that's I am the science.
If you criticize me, you're criticizing science.
Well, look. Even God had to rest on the seventh day, so at 80 years old, the science is gonna retire. I'm sorry to leave you. Look, it's just. Even a man like Tony gets exhausted feeding AIDS fleas to puppies. It happens.
AIDS fleas to puppies. Woof. So let's just take a peek. The New York Post has a great one. Enough of Fauci's lies, from Miranda Devine. That's a hell of a name. Anthony Fauci was absolutely adamant that the National Institutes of Health has never funded dangerous research on bat viruses in the Chinese labs suspected of being the source of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We gave money to a third party, and the third party gave the money to China. We didn't do it directly.
So, remember when it was verboten to suggest the Wuhan lab leak theory, which we now know conclusively to have been the case?
Yeah, the only question was...
There's no longer a question of how it happened. Yeah. We're now certain that it didn't come from wet markets and bats.
Well, it could have spread to the wet markets because of the Wuhan lab leak. Look, the only thing we don't know about the Wuhan lab leak is, was it an accident or an accident?
Right.
That's the only thing we don't know.
And as we've discussed on this show several times, it doesn't matter if it was an accident. Tactically, strategically, once the virus had out, then the Chinese had control of essentially a biological weapon, and all they had to do was control the vector of spread, as in they shut down travel between provinces in China, but they did not shut down travel from Wuhan out to the rest of the world.
Those commie bastards. Like, that is, I mean, from a purely tactical standpoint, I'm kind of in awe at the balls of a move like that. But that doesn't mean it's not evil AF. Like,
right. I mean, yes.
So whenever you say, oh, the government wouldn't do that, let's include the fact that the government would use a pass-through to fund gain-of-function research in China and will force feed their AIDS trials to New York orphans. Like, good Lord. Like,
through feeding tubes, through nasopharyngeal feeding tubes. Are you kidding? It's just like, I wonder if he used one of those giant freaking cotton swabs like the Cuomo brothers.
I'm sorry, man. I don't get it. Maybe I need more coffee.
To force feed the drugs down their feeding tubes? The giant cotton swab?
I don't know what that has
like
anything to do with the Cuomo brothers.
You don't remember the Cuomo brothers doing their bit on CNN where he brought out the giant cotton? It was a freaking Q-tip like this big to make a joke about how uncomfortable the... You don't remember that shit?
No.
Oh, God, they were roundly criticized for that absolute abortion of a joke. But here's a great sentence. It's like being a little pregnant. The NIH either funded so-called gain-of-function research to juice up bat coronaviruses in China, or it didn't. Turns out it did. And it did by exploiting a loophole in an Obama administration ban on the Frankenstein research put in place in 2014.
Well, you can only be a little pregnant, just like you can only have a little abortion. I'm the science. Do not argue with me. I'm absolutely impeccable. Is the fact that we have contempt for Dr. Fauci coming through yet? That, Scott Adams has got a thing about, when you trust the experts, do so at your own peril. I don't know that there is anybody that is a clearer example of that concept than Dr. Anthony Fauci.
I'm from the government, and I'm here to help.
No.
It's like saying you want to be a grown-up and a Democrat.
Yeah. So, what is the, just of the things we've discussed so far, okay? What is the shittiest thing Fauci has done so far? His absolute narcissism over COVID. The fact that he used it to turn himself into a star, okay? The fact that he basically had dogs eaten alive. The fact that he did experimental drug research. Hey, boy, I just put something together. Fauci's totally okay with forcing experimental drugs on kids. I don't know if that has anything to do at all with the COVID response. I can't quite put it together in my brain.
And I'm sure it's completely unrelated to the recent studies that have led all of the European medical facilities that were engaged in prepubescent trans surgeries and drugs to stop all of those programs, having discovered that they have incredibly negative, almost inevitable negative side effects. But
Fauci's worked for the government for 55 years.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Almost as long as Joe Biden. Which is another interesting little piece of trivia. But I think if I had to put my finger on it, the worst thing, maybe the worst thing that we can point directly at Fauci is this. Fauci initially greeted COVID by insisting it wasn't a major threat, only to flip almost overnight into a strident hawk. Now, when it says almost overnight was a few months. And I want you to think back, put on your Wayback glasses and think back, end of January 2020. Donald Trump said, this is a problem. I'm shutting down travel. Shutting down travel to China. That's where the problem is.
And you're racist.
And he got roundly criticized for being a racist. Fauci
Hitler's
immediately
racist.
ran to the first camera he could find with a red blinking light on it and screamed, "No, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. You should go out and live your lives like you normally do." And then we had Nancy Pelosi come down to Chinatown. Unless you're a racist, because you're a deplorable, you belong in the basket. And then
Why Chinatown, Nancy? Why?
And so basically, what we had was early on, Trump tried to implement an effective quarantine. And he was in a very difficult position because the correct thing to do when we first learned about the COVID pandemic was to quarantine the area that was infected, because that's how a quarantine works. Right? If you have a biological weapon go off in a giant hotel, the CDC doesn't come out and throw up tents and start shoving people inside. They don't come out and take everybody out of the hotel and spread them around. Right? And they don't go and gather up all the healthy people and lock them in jail so that they can let the sick people out of the hotel. No, they tent that son of a bitch and say, stay put until we figure it out. You quarantine the sick. Fauci and his ilk, their solution was to lock up the everybody. to lock them all away.
I'm a prison planet. Like it's difficult to exaggerate it how close we came to literal global prison planet.
Yeah. And Trump's first reaction was, "Oh, this thing's happening in Wuhan, and it's a
Chinese
serious
problem.
threat. It's dangerous.
Let's
we need
be
to tent that
suspicious
bitch.
of China." Yeah.
We need to quarantine China from the U.S. Absolutely, 100% the right move. And how do we know it was the right move? Because every Democrat said it was the wrong move, called him a racist for doing it, and then, as soon as they were in a position to do it themselves, they did something similar. Right? So we know it was the right move because the Democrats said it was a bad move, and then they did it too. That's the surest way to know that a Republican is right, is that a Democrat says different.
Yeah, especially if they say different for extremely emotional reasons
Right.
that are
You're
dangerous.
racist.
Yeah, that's right. You're a misogynist. You're a racist. You're a homophobe. No. I
You
just
don't fit the message.
I just have questions about how monkeypox spreads to children since it requires close contact. It's not a true STD, but you're not getting it through the air.
Yeah.
Just say it. And speaking of monkeypox, I just need to retire before my symptoms begin to show. It's not related to my opinions about AIDS 40 years ago at all.
Yeah. So Fauci's been lying and screwing up the entire medical world for 55 years. And finally, I want to say it's over. But
He's still going to talk to cameras.
Temper your celebration, son, because he's still going to go out and talk to cameras. He's going to be on the news shows. He's going to write a book. He's going to write a book. He's going to go on Sesame Street and stab Oscar the Grouch and the Count.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to what I said at the beginning of the show. I wish there was, basically that it was just socially acceptable to shame these people for the remainder of their years, because once it happened to a few of them, the rest of them would at least get far enough in line to not be so obvious. Because for me, if anything could possibly have been the most egregious, it was the whole thing with the gain of function, and well, I didn't do the gain of function, gave the money to this third party, and then the third party did the gain of function in China, and it's like, you absolute piece of shit, we call that money laundering.
And look, and just to be clear, he has faced no consequences over having perjured himself while under oath and being interrogated about crimes he committed.
Yeah.
And I don't expect that he will face any repercussions.
No, that's the thing. I mean, shame is an effective tool. That's one reason why the left wants to eliminate it. You can't body shame me. Well, honey, okay, fine, I won't, but you're going to die at 45 of a pulmonary embolism because you're 200 pounds overweight. All right, Lizzo the Lizzo, okay? Honey, you're not beautiful at any size. You are not healthy at any size. I get that the news media tells you that, but, I mean...
But you need to put down that disgusting little fat pill. Fauci's medical opinion of your size is not relevant.
Yeah, and we're just... there's no shame, even for people that have done... Look, and it's not like people can't change, okay? The story of the Phoenix or the resurrection in Christianity. I mean, all of these have got important things to teach us, okay? People can have aha moments and change their lives, all right? That's not what happened with Fauci. He's been a piece of shit his whole life. In fact, if the people that know him personally are to be believed, he's only gotten worse and more arrogant over time. And now he gets $250,000 a year for the rest of his life. Yay!
Now, in fairness, he is 81. But that's probably enough money to keep him in baby blood until he's 103.
Gotta fund that adrenochrome somehow.
Come on, Fauci, stick out your tongue. Stick out your tongue. Can you lick your knees standing straight up? I bet you can.
Okay. let's touch the other one. I know we've only got a few minutes, but it's
well, okay, and speaking of the golden parachutes and things that Fauci destroyed, yeah. Speaking of things that Dr. Fauci has absolutely destroyed, let's talk about the impending collapse of the real estate market. Home prices plunging in pandemic boom towns as markets slump. Now, you guys know that I shoot a lot of real estate photography. That's one of my little side hustles that I like to do. In fact, I'm shooting half a dozen houses today, probably. For the first 4 or 5 months this year, I kept hearing stories from agents where it was, they'd list a house for $500,000 or $600,000, and then somebody would come in and say, "Yo, we'll give you, 10% above asking or 20% above asking."
So the answer was
cash
yes.
now, and boom, Steve says, "Not in my hood. A $250,000 house just listed at $550." Yeah, and it will probably move, but that's not the national story, and that's not going to last much longer. Homeowners in markets that boomed when the real estate sector was red hot during the COVID-19 pandemic are now forced to slash prices due to dwindling demand, according to the data released Monday by Redfin. Across the U.S., 21% of home sellers dropped their asking prices in July, the highest share since Redfin began tracking the metric in 2012, according to the firm. The shares of homes with price drops in July compared to 1 year ago increased in 94 of 97 metro areas surveyed. The trend was at its worst in pandemic home buying boom towns such as Boise, Idaho, where a whopping 69.7% of homes for sale slashed listing prices in July. Other overheated markets included Denver with a 58% drop and Salt Lake City with a 54.8% share of cuts. Now, the article, I don't think, doesn't say anything about how much they dropped those prices.
See, and that's the problem, okay? It's sort of like how gas went to $4 or $5 a gallon. So then when it fell back down to $3 to $4 a gallon, it felt like relief. But it was still I think the national average was 201 when Trump left office, right? So it was $1.80 here in Georgia.
Correct.
When he left, it was less than $2 a gallon, and now it's the cheapest I can find it within 20 miles of where we're at right now is $3.19 a gallon.
Yeah, that's the Kroger. It's $3.16 if you dial the number.
Well, look, the point is like Steve was saying, in his hood, a $250,000 house just listed for $550,000. There's so much that's just terrifyingly wrong with that. And look, the person selling the house, if somebody comes along and says, "Hey, your $300,000 house, I'll just give you $600,000 cash right now," and you go, "Well, yeah, okay, sure."
And those are not investors interested in buying a house that they're going to make money on the sale of. That's investors buying a house that they're going to make money on the renting of.
Yeah, the renting of, where suddenly your 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom is $2,000 a month to rent. You want to put on your Wayback glasses. I think
that's what I was paying in rent on our house in Kale'iloa on Oahu 12 years ago.
Yeah, but that's Hawaii.
Exactly.
No, what I was going to say is put on the Wayback glasses. When I did commercial pest control, sometimes I would do apartment complexes, and sometimes I would do very, very nice apartment complexes. And the luxury apartments, okay, the 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, covered porch, multiple swimming pools on the property, gated community luxury apartments were about $1,800 a month. Right? So now your basic bitch house that it's not luxury, that does not have pools, okay, where you have to cut your own grass and so forth. Now it's $2,000 a month. That doesn't hurt rich people.
No.
That only hurts lower income and middle class people. And so, but this
Crackshot, where'd you get that from? Crackshot says a total of 117,383 U.S. properties started the foreclosure process in the first 6 months of 2022, up 219% from the first half of last year and up 19% from the first half of 2020.
So, but here's the thing, okay? Capitalism says that a thing is worth what the market will bear.
Yep.
Okay, so if somebody is paying you $500,000 for your $250,000 house, where's the hole in capitalism? Because we know it's not actually worth that. And yet we insist, especially when we do subcontract work for video, if somebody wants to pay me $20,000 to swing my camera, I'm worth every penny of that $20,000.
Damn right.
Okay, so where's the difference between the market manipulation with the houses and actual capitalism? And when do we have the uncomfortable conversation about how if you look at it in terms of if you want to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs. The collapse of the housing market is not only inevitable, but ultimately healthy. It's sort of like cough medicine tasting like shit, but making you feel better. And then Alex from the TPS report says it's equity firms offsetting their tax burden, knowing they'll get paid. Yes. Offsetting their tax burden, knowing they'll get paid twice when it all implodes. Which,
yeah,
I mean, you get to bet against yourself.
I've been saying the same thing. I think there's a chance that there will be some slick maneuvering to extend that 12 to 18 months. Basically, it should crash at the 12 to 18 month mark. We appear to be right on schedule. There's going to be some slick maneuvering, I think, to artificially extend the time before the collapse in a desperate bid to be able to lie about the bubble. Come the 2024 election.
No, I think it's going to collapse somewhere around January of 2024 because then they can say, well, those darn Republicans, if they just cooperated with Joe Biden.
Maybe.
No, it's kind of like when Barack Obama's unemployment fell below 8%.
Yeah.
Just before the 2012 election.
Fell below 8%. Yeah. All right, well, we need to button it up. It's 8 o'clock. Y'all be safe out there. Thanks for watching. We love you, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, that's the problem.